Welcome to In Touch with Officer John and Ray the DA. I'm your host, Jenna McNeil. This week, Victim Services Director Mary Houlihan joins us as we discuss homicide cases of officers murdered in the line of duty. Officer Bryan Durman, Deputy Joe Angelucci, and Deputy Anthony Rakes are among some of those heroes who lost their lives while serving their communities. Officer John, Ray, and Mary discuss the challenges surviving family members face as they experience the criminal justice system, and are often shocked and disappointed with many of the realities of this imperfect system, such as explaining that attempted murder and manslaughter in the second degree are nonviolent crimes according to our statutes. These families are forever affected by their losses, and we remember them as the holiday seasons approach. Let's tune in now.
Welcome to In Touch Crime Beat. I'm Officer Don with Fayette Commonwealth's Attorney Ray Larson.
Out of jail, okay? Don't mess up.
And those are the people, those repeat offenders, the ones that go to prison. And
I say we're the #1 rated radio show in the whole country.
I'm Officer Don with Fayette Commonwealth's.
I got a call from her son, that she had just died. And for people listening that don't have any recollection of this, her son, Joe Angelucci, was a deputy sheriff back in the mid to late 80s and was out serving a mental warrant. And this guy, William Bennett, just grabbed his gun out of his holster and shot him, and he ultimately died as a result of that. Since then, and Joyce Angelucci's husband was a Fayette Circuit Court, Judge Armando Angelucci. And so I talked to him this morning too, and he was, they've been married for long, and he was just all grief-stricken. And you become friends with people because I tried this William Bennett guy, and any rate, you just become friends with them. And Joyce Angelucci, one of the things she said was she was determined to outlive William Bennett.
Why?
That was just that was something that she
wanted to see him in prison, stay in prison too, right?
Oh yeah, and he died in prison, and they tried to get him out. And we went down and did a hearing before the parole board because they were trying to get him out on some kind of medical deal, and that didn't succeed. And so we're awfully sorry to report that Joyce Angelucci has passed away. Now with us this morning.
Well, let me pause it for a second. Okay. Of course, this reminds us. We've had another tragic situation this month. A Marion County Sheriff's deputy was killed November 14th on a traffic stop at about 2 in the morning. This deputy, Anthony Rakes, basically pulled up to what he thought was a motorist assist, a vehicle that had stopped in the middle of the roadway. And he got out to help. That was his last radio call, that he was going to check on a vehicle that stopped in the middle of the roadway. And then moments later, he radioed in that he'd been shot and he needed an ambulance. Of course, when crews got there, he had 2 chest wounds, and he ultimately succumbed to his injuries. So our hearts are with the family and the community there in Marion County who lost this sheriff's deputy on November 14th.
Well, the loss of a loved one to sudden violent death is a different ballgame than somebody that's ill and is or old and that sort of thing. But this young guy, this Rakes guy, and Joe Angelucci, and Bryan Durman, the Lexington police officers run over and killed by this Glenn Donahue character. The sudden violent death is, everything's going along just fine until Brandy Durman gets the call that her husband is at the hospital and not likely to survive. Or Judge and Mrs. Angelucci get the call that their son has been shot, or this Rakes family gets the call that the husband has been killed. This is serious. I mean, especially this time of year, it's difficult. And Mary Houlihan's with us, and she's the director of all of our victim services, and she deals with victims every day. And Mary, so tell me what you hear from crime victims this time of year when when they have to deal with the holidays. It's typically a joyous time of year, and it's not for them. So how do they deal with that?
It's not, and depending upon how recent the loss is, really the holidays are just a reminder of that loss. There's that empty seat at the table that just screams for who has been taken from the family. And when it is a sudden violent loss, as in the case with murder, there's just no time to prepare. The cases that you all are speaking about where our law enforcement officers have been killed in the line of duty are especially painful. These are people that are out serving their community, that are just trying to help all of us, and to think that they're killed for the intentions that they have, it just really adds insult to injury and makes it an especially painful time for those families to recover.
Now, Bryan Durman's widow is going to be since his death and our involvement with her, she's made kind of a career decision. And tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's interesting, and Brandy is certainly special to our office, but it also happens with a lot of victims that go through the criminal justice system. The criminal justice system is so very different than what the average citizen believes it is until they are kind of stuck in the middle of it as a victim or as a surviving family member of a victim. And sometimes the experience makes them want to do something to speak out about the criminal justice system or to make changes in it. And I think Brandy has connected to many things she's already done within our community, but she also decided to make a career change herself and is interested in and has started at UK getting her social work degree and now wants to work in victims advocacy. So she's going to do an internship with our office, and I look so forward to it because I believe it's going to teach us as much as we're able to teach her, because there's just nothing like hearing from the actual survivor what our system feels like to them and have her see what we're doing to try and work for victims. But I bet she makes a lot of changes in how we're doing that.
One of the interesting things, people that go through the criminal justice system as victims, survivors of homicide victims, for example, are so angry at the end because the system, here's what's been described for me. It's not a criminal justice system, they say, because there is no justice in it. It's a criminal system, and it's designed completely for the hoodlums. And that's one of the things that's caused Brandy to get herself fired up. And this is something that you and I have complained about, Officer Don. And that is, Bryan Durman was run down and killed by this character, Glenn Donahue. Killed. I mean, run into. And he was charged with manslaughter in the second degree and convicted of manslaughter in the second degree. And how outrageous when Brandy Durman found out manslaughter in the second degree, the violent death of her husband, is not considered a violent crime under Kentucky law. Mm-hmm. And I know you just go on and on and on about it until I just kind of glaze over listening to you, because I've been through it before. And that's one of the things she's very interested in is the redefinition of what violent crimes are. Now, why do we say violent crimes are important? Well, they're very significant, because if you're convicted of a violent crime, you have to serve 85% of your sentence. If you're convicted of a nonviolent crime, then you only have to serve 20% of your sentence before you're eligible for parole. Now, Donahue was maxed out on manslaughter second degree, which is 10 years. 20% of that is 2 years, right? So that's the eligibility date for parole for that character. So, I mean, it's just very offensive.
And even beyond the years, to the victim, just saying that this is a nonviolent crime, that the legislature does not consider the horrific death that Officer Durman experienced to be a violent crime, the years don't mean nearly as much as what that feels like to a victim.
Well, we've dealt with that in other situations involving police officers, where we had police officers shot over behind headquarters. Remember Ed Lingenfelter?
Tim Russell.
Tim Russell. But you take the Tim Russell's case, you know, these guys, as a prosecutor, you made the decision to charge with assault first instead of attempted murder, okay? And you actually had to go and to the roll calls and make sure that you clarified that and explained it to the police officers who were gathered for their patrol. Say, look, I know that you want me to charge with attempted murder because it sounds better, and it does, because that's what he tried to do. He tried to kill a police officer, but it's more appropriate to charge with assault first. Now, why is that? When he tried to kill this police officer, it's attempted murder. That sounds more horrific than assault first. Why did you need to feel the need to explain that to the very police officer?
Well, police officers are like everybody else. Attempted murder does sound lots more significant than assault first degree.
Sounds like a big deal.
Yeah, yeah. And so, but under the legislature's dumbass approach to this thing, attempted murder is perceived as a nonviolent crime. That means anybody's convicted of attempted murder is eligible for parole after 20% of their sentence. So we went around to these roll calls because I knew that the police didn't understand that because it doesn't make any sense. And so I went around to explain it, and I started out saying we're going to charge this guy that shot Tim Russell with assault in the first degree. Well, I mean, the anger on the faces of police officers was palpable. And for you, that means it's noticeable.
Big word.
Yeah. And so what happens then is I explained it, the whole violent versus nonviolent, and then all of a sudden they understood it. They were outraged at the definition issue.
Sure.
But
well, and it's because as police officers, we have to have an understanding of the law as it applies to what we're doing. But when you really get into the meat of it, that's the process.
Tune into the following stations to hear the full episode.